Hello, I'm Stephen Galpin and let me welcome you to Property Matters post-election special. We're going to be getting the views of some of our property experts in this programme, and I'm delighted to welcome Sally Wang. Welcome to you, Sally.
Nice to be here.
Good to have you back in the studio. Sally is responsible, I suppose is the word, for running her company SJW Property and bringing in a lot of investment into the UK from China in particular. So thank you for that, and we'll be talking about whether that might continue or not. And joining Sally is Finbarr Doyle of P4HB Procurement Specialist. Now, if you don't know what P4HB is, I think it's Procurement for House Builders, if I've got that right.
Absolutely correct, yes.
Jolly good. Okay, well, that's all the introductions over. So rather than a question and answers session, I just want to get the feeling of how our contributors are feeling about the election results and what they might expect from the new government. And Sally, I'm going to start with you. People in China, where historically have spent an awful lot of money in the UK investing in property, often for their children at university and various other reasons. Are the people in China interested in UK politics? And if so, what do they think of the election result that we've had?
I think the Chinese investors, they are interested in the politics, but only from the perspective that will impact their investment or life. So I'll give you an example. If they're buying for their children are studying here, they wanted to know whether the politics, whatever the election result or what's going to happen afterwards, will create a very happy, safe, and very harmonious, is it the word, the harmony, the environment for their kids to study, and also whether the education system here, the quality is still good, top notch. And from the investor point of view, they wanted to know that the country that they're investing in, the political environment is going to be stable, the economy situation is going to grow or booming, and also they wanted to know that the environment will give them the security that their asset here will be safe and will be well looked after. And if there's a problem arise, there will be legitimate and also a logical, practical solution to it.
Okay. Just tell me, the thing that's always interested me is we have this huge investment from China into the property market. And as we've said, a lot of times it's to house their children while they're at university or whatever here, during their education. After that education period is finished, what percentage of your Chinese clients will keep the property as an investment going on? Or once the education process is over, do they want to sell and take their money back to China?
Well, it depends on the economy. A lot of factors they will consider. Let's see if the place they have the property, whether in the UK or in the States or anywhere in the world, if the kids go back to China, but the place they have their asset, they feel safe and produce good rental income and provide a good capital growth. And also, it's kind of a hassle-free or very secure, they would keep it here if they don't need that money. If you have any of the element missing, they'll be thinking, I might have a better option.
Sure, okay, thank you for that. Finbarr, you're in the business of building material procurement.
Yeah.
So actually, you're probably one of the best placed people to judge the mood of developers and those that are putting billions of pounds into building these properties, and perhaps the next 1.5 million properties that we're going to have in this next 5 years. Well, what do you think the view of developers is at the moment? Is it optimistic with this new government?
I think it's early to say, because I think people are still absorbing the information, and I think there's only some headlines and some sort of high-level announcements so far. I think overall it's positive. Certainly our take on what the government has announced is positive, but that needs to be put in context of the fact that there was very little in place in the first place. So anything is better than nothing, but we're taking it as a positive step forward. I do think there's some gaps in their thinking when it comes to some of the announcements around planning. And I think there's some major gaps in some of the strategies that they've announced so far. So those gaps, they've spoken about, employing another 300 planners up and down the country. But what they've not spoken about is decision frameworks and how planning decisions are made at a local level. And they've spoken about, maybe as an exception to that, the larger infrastructure projects that might need to go to government level. But at a local level, they've not changed that decision making. And I think that's where some of the bottleneck, a bigger part of the bottleneck is.
I've thought for quite some time, I wonder if we're past the point, given the complexities and sort of technical intricacies of development these days, whether a sort of a lay committee is really the right body to be.
It's not. It should be a professional. It should be a professional committee. It should be far more professionalised, and the framework should be consistent and not open to interpretation. And I think that's where you get the NIMBYism. That's where you get really, I'm not doing it in my watch, but I'll do it. I'm quite happy to have an opinion.
I was quite pleased to hear the Deputy Prime Minister say, she sort of said that she wanted to be aware of any significant developments that were being planned or in for planning, so that she could monitor the success rate and the practicality of those decisions. I thought that was good.
I think that's really good, a really positive signal that, that NIMBYism might not actually wash.
Just says you're being looked at, doesn't it?
Exactly, and no one likes that if they think they might have a challenge. Just so long as it's consistent. Consistently executed. I think that's a key thing here. We don't know whether it will be or not, but let's hope that sort of positive sort of approach is a consistent approach across the country.
Yes.
I think a bigger area of concern from our perspective is this target of 1.5 million registered units over the next 5 years. I was looking yesterday at some stats. The highest number of units we've built in this country since 1972 was in 1988, and that was about 120,000 registered units, and that's on the year after Black Monday.
Is that 120 or 220?
Sorry, 220,000 units. That was on the back of Black Monday the previous year. So we committed to those units. And if you look at recent history, we've had obviously the crash of 2008. We had then Brexit if a number of years later. We've had COVID. The most number of units we've built in this country in recent history is 2022, 191,000 units. Mm. We've had, during that period, we've had shortage of materials. After 2008, a lot of the manufacturing base was scrapped because it wasn't fit for purpose. That has been rebuilt back to an extent. But if we're to have any chance of achieving this sort of 1.5 million over 5 years, then I think we need a strategy of investment in material manufacturing, a strategy of investment and grants around MMC. We need a real drive towards sustainable products. And if I was a developer right now, the one thing I would be definitely doing right now is securing my supply if I want to be part of that 1.5 million. Securing supply by aligning with strategic partners and making sure that you are getting your materials, because we will go on allocation, and that will drive increase in prices too.
What about the labour?
I think that's a factor. MMC might play a role in so modular construction over the longer term might alleviate that problem. But Brexit has taken a huge chunk of construction workers and tradesmen out of the system, and without an apprenticeship program and training programs for trade, making it an attractive option for school leavers rather than simply the university option. Without making that putting all of those things in place, I can't see how, even with a huge investment in MMC, how we can get there.
I'm kind of like a very positive person, right? Like And if we want to achieve something in my company, I don't actually look at the historical figures. I'll be like, that happened before, it doesn't mean it's going to happen to me. That didn't happen before, it doesn't mean I'm not going to make it. But the thing is, as you said, we need a strategy and also a solid plan. But does the government, I mean, you're in the development sector of the industry, did you see solid plan or strategy? Do they have a strategy, or is just the industry people have not seen the strategy yet to deal with the challenges to make this happen? Apparently, from what I heard, the two challenges are material and the labor.
Yeah. So I think previously, this is a more interventionist strategy that's coming from the government. The Conservative government was far more interested in letting enterprise make decisions and find their own way and reap the rewards or the losses as they went. This interventionist sort of approach, I think, still has some gaps, and I think it's too early to say whether or not there are no plans, perhaps.
So they just set a goal, but they have not decided from your understanding, they have not set up whether to go through the introduction
I hope they haven't yet decided, but they're talking about it. And I'd like to be part of that conversation,
Well, at least they're doing something, and they do seem to be bringing in specialists to help with their decisions, which is good news. Sally, just in the last minute of this half, I'd like to just ask you, as you've been involved in selling new developments and apartments within new developments for some years now, your experience,
more than 10 years,
your experience is great. Do you think we're moving to building the right products now? And the reason I ask that is this: 10 years ago, if a development hadn't got a swimming pool, a gymnasium, a cinema, or anything else, it was, oh no, well, it's not really up to speed. Now we have such a focus, because of increased borrowing costs, we have such a focus on keeping service charges down and making the investment more profitable. Do you think developers have grasped onto the fact that perhaps developments need to be more simple, straightforward, and offer just accommodation rather than all these very expensive facilities?
My thought on this is, well, you've got to look at it. I will look at this from different angles, different layers. First of all, in my mind, I think architecture, buildings like this, in the ancient times, that's the first way for human beings to write our thoughts. That's why we have pyramids. That's why we have the Great Wall. And then, because the publication, the printing industry comes in the 15th century, then we started to kind of forgot about what architecture or buildings, what their real meanings are. And then at some point, it becomes just a room for human beings to live in. I think that's a wrong approach. The right approach is these, every single, even the studio apartment, that's for a human being, one of us, to live in. So the ultimate goal is this needs to be a community. This really needs to provide a sense of living, to show who we are in the 21st century in different era. But then the thing is, if you're taking it back to a bigger picture, all the buildings that are now currently building in London or in the rest of the UK, it needs to be in time with the country's ultimate vision.
That's all we've got time for in this half of the show. So join me again after the break when I'll be talking to Sally and Finbarr about the election results. Hello and welcome back to our post-election special programme with Sally Wang and Finbarr Doyle. Welcome back, guys. So, Finbarr, we've got this target, or supposed target that we've been told about, of 1.5 million homes in the next, well, really it's going to have to be in the next about 4.5 years, isn't it? I personally think that's going some. Taking that, we have difficulties. We have difficulties over materials with escalating costs, And we have difficulty with labour since the introduction of Brexit. How are we going to cope?
Well, that's a really good question, Stephen. I think that there's a couple of fundamental shifts we need to make. We've, as a country, made it really attractive for kids to come out of school and go to university. We've made it unattractive for construction is an unattractive industry. We've made it that way, mainly around the sort of standards that we set, etc., etc. I think there needs to be a national drive on apprenticeships, on trades training, and to make it attractive and to put incentives in there for people to take that up as an option rather than simply going to university.
But these houses are going to be built in the next 4.5 years, and getting apprentices onto the construction site is going to take a similar amount of time, isn't it, by the time you finish?
It is. But what are we to do? Because we, post Brexit, if you look historically back, I'm Irish, so I can say this. The Irish were responsible for a lot of the infrastructure built in the UK because they came across, because that's the jobs that they took. Eastern Europeans took those jobs 10, 15 years ago, and 1 in 2 of construction workers 7 or 8 years ago was Eastern European in London. Yeah. So, we've closed our borders to that, and I think we need a national conversation around how we're going to do this, because there's no quick solution here. There's really no quick solution.
So, are the government wrong to give these targets out?
I think they need to really articulate better the detail of how they've come up with that figure and how they think it's going to happen, because I genuinely can't see it.
We were just talking off camera a few minutes ago, and I mentioned to you that I had a friend that wrote to me and said, are there enough development sites around to build these homes? Are they readily available? Will they get planning, etc., etc.? And I would like to see us move to the sort of continental way of doing things, which would be that either the government or the local authority take an area of land, they put the infrastructure in, the drainage pipes, the electricity, the gas, or whatever else is needed, and then say, right, here is to use a Boris expression, an oven-ready site. Would you like to buy part of it? And I think that would work.
I think that's a much better approach to the one we have currently. And on the continent, that's exactly what happens. I was in Ireland for 2 weeks, came back last week, and all the new developments in Ireland are based on that. You create the infrastructure first, and then you create the communities second. And I think doing it that way means you can build communities. Doing it the other way means you're building units.
Yes.
And that's it. And you might get some infrastructure built by the developer along the way.
Units on their own are not the answer. We've seen this. We've seen in the past office blocks converted into blocks of apartments. Yeah, great. Except there's no infrastructure around. There's no shops. There's no transport. There's no tube station. There's no and therefore it actually creates more problems than it
actually creates a real socially difficult environment.
Socially deprived area.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah. And of course that has consequence on taxpayers' money, and then policing it and making sure that it doesn't overspill. And it creates all sorts of difficulties later on.
Sally, you must look at our planning and our visions and think, where on earth are they? I mean, you're so focused, the Chinese government are so focused about what they want to achieve here, there and everywhere. I know you've had your construction difficulties over the last few years, but that's probably through oversupply in some cases, is it not? I don't know.
Stephen, I actually spent 23 years in this country and less years in China. So I consider this as one of my home as well. It's two countries have a different approach to the same matter. It's not, it's very hard to see which one is right or wrong. You have both ups and downs. But what I find frustrating for me is in China, You know, like we would have this 50 years country vision, 100 years country vision, 150 years country vision. So in my company, when I started the company, I will tell myself and then gradually tell my leadership team what is my company's vision and what's going to happen to this company when I retire, when roughly I'm going to retire, and what's my role after my retirement. And I started to prepare for that because what I wanted for my company is a long, reputable, long company, like have a very, very long life. In the UK, I've seen that the lease year is different from in China. In China, the lease year is 70 years, but here you can go up to 999 years. So I keep telling all my team, the leader members, and I said, okay, I want SJW to exist as long along the way of 999 years, as long as the lease. This gave me some meaning to my life because I devoted like 20, 30 years of my life to this company. As country is the same, you know, I feel frustrated, like I do not know what is this country's long-term vision, at least from the TV, the newspapers. But educate me if I miss out this information. But if I do not know as a person living in this country for 23 years, then how the leaders of a different term will know? Then how do you make sure everybody is working towards the long-term vision?
Well, the fact is they're not, because we're in a democracy, and the slight downside of our democracy here is that it's on a 4 to 5 year cycle. So you can't actually do what's needed, can you? Because you won't get in again.
That maybe the thing needs to do is, you know, if somebody really comes out to say that to make great and great again, then define the meaning of great in every aspect. And then I think, you know, if you want to make and now the situation we're in is not the most rosy period because I lived 20 years here. I've seen good times, bad times. I don't consider now to be the most glamorous time. But then at times like this, we really need a vision. We really need everybody to see what and where we're heading towards, and then have some plan. If we don't have a solid plan, that's not a problem. Let's work together, come up with a plan. It's like when I set up a company goal, it's okay. We set a goal wrong at the beginning, but let's work together to work towards the vision because we improvise along the way. But the most important thing is the spirit needs to be right, the spirit to make it happen. If we say we're going to make, after this election, if we say that we're going to make the economy good, okay, let's have the spirit. How are we going to impact and influence every single person to contribute and make this economy good? I would say maybe start to do something like, you know, we deal with the letting and management. So I just kind of give an example, like step back to the actual thing that we do. Letting and management, there's one problem that we're facing and frustrates me is the tenant eviction. Okay, let's say we have a tenant stayed in the property, decided not to pay the rent, but this person, he or she decided to have a luxury lifestyle, right? Stop paying rent. Now we have a real life case. The court have gave a decision in April. The bailiff, we got a date, it's the 10th of October. 6 months. 6 months. 6 months. This is ridiculous. Yeah. I mean, the point for me, when I look at this matter, is, you know, from very, very small point of view, is I feel sorry for our landlords, but you can do rental insurance for it, and then we cover that, that's no problem. From a bigger point of view, what we are encouraging is behavior like this. If people know that they can stay in a property, take 6 months just for the bailiff to come along, 6 months for the court to make a decision. They can get a 1 year luxury lifestyle they wouldn't work for and pay for with their sweat, blood and sweat as everybody else do. Then what we're encouraging a spirit in this society.
I think this morning I was listening to the Housing Minister, and whilst the Leasehold Reform Act has gone through, the Renters Reform hasn't, has it? And he was asked, what are you going to do about this? Now, what he seemed to be saying, it was a little bit vague, as you might expect, but he seemed to be saying that they were going to look at the renters' reforms and pick the the best, and probably Section 21 is probably an area that needs addressing, and bring in what's necessary as soon as possible. And I really do hope that happens, because it's not just for renters, it's for, you know...
I think it's the invisible spirit, invisible thing, the value. It's the value, Stephen. When I was in university, when I come to this country 23 years ago, I only come here with £1,000. And my salary was £800 a month. And I will live in the room, a tiny little room that I can afford to pay for, because I know, okay, I need to work hard to get what I want to get. This is the value I think we should.
I think there is I think there's a lack of moral compass. I think we've lost our moral compass in some ways. I think if you look at the last 7 years, whichever way you vote, whatever, whether you're blue or red, it's irrelevant. You cannot say for the last 7 years that we've had a moral compass leading us, and I think that's affected society.
Okay, well, look, there we are. That's all we've got time for. So a big thank you to Sally Wang. Thank you, Sally, for coming in. Thank you, Finbarr, for coming in.
Thank you.
It's been good to get your view on the post-election situation. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you for watching. Look forward to seeing you next time on Property Matters.